Does President Biden plan to honor his pledge to nominate a black woman to the court?
Holding unacceptable views that they're expressing.
We've got a good one for you today. Supreme Court Justice Breyer said he's going to retire, and Joe Biden is stuck in a pickle with a campaign promise that he made. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said some really weird things that we're going to get to. There's a big protest going on in Canada right now, Neil Young versus Joe Rogan, and China has a demeaning way of testing people for the COVID or the CCP bad fever. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob, and Daily Caller Live starts right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
That might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually their name, Jobob.
Live from a dingy bunker completely cut off from the outside world except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. Today it is December. That was the first time I've messed up on the date this year. January 27th, the year of our Lord 2022. This is Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Thanks so much for tuning in. We've got an interesting one for you today. Some stuff going on in Canada. Supreme Court Justice is retiring. Joe Biden is promising something that he shouldn't have promised, but we'll get to that in a second. Also, China, oh my gosh, this is probably our most disgusting story. We're going to get to that at the end, so stick around if you feel so inclined. I want to get to this first. This is, I think, probably the thing that's going to be the most interesting over the next couple months, weeks. We'll see what happens. Justice Breyer yesterday, a Supreme Court justice appointed by Bill Clinton, I believe in 94. Might get my date wrong there. But Justice Breyer, appointed by Bill Clinton, said that he's going to retire at the end of the Supreme Court term. That means Joe Biden, President of the United States, gets to nominate some people, and we'll see how that goes, because Joe Biden promised something that he probably shouldn't have promised, because guess what? I'm not going to say that yet. It's a little bit bad that he promised what he promised. Let me show you a clip from Jen Psaki of what it is that he promised. He was asked a question yesterday. Now, at the beginning of this, the reporter says, hypothetically, because I think when this press conference was happening, it was just rumors swirling. Breyer told the press, but not the president yet, an official statement. So Jen Psaki is saying, oh, we don't actually know yet officially. So the reporter said, hypothetically. So that's what's happening at the beginning of this clip. But the rest of it is quite interesting. If you haven't already, do me a quick favor. Click the little like button. Click the little share button over here. The like button, share button, hit some comments. It's super important on how we do with the algorithm. It helps us get to more people. More people need to be seeing this sort of stuff. So really appreciate you doing that if you're watching right now. But check this out. This is a question asked from Jen Psaki, or of Jen Psaki yesterday.
So let's say hypothetically, a Supreme Court justice was to retire and announce it on his or her own terms. Does President Biden plan to honor his pledge to nominate a black woman to the court?
Well, I've commented on this previously. The president has stated and reiterated his commitment to nominating a black woman to the Supreme Court, and certainly stands by that. For today, again, I'm just not going to be able to say anything about any specifics until, of course, Justice Breyer makes any announcement, should he decide to make an announcement.
So there's that. President Biden, I guess, on the campaign trail, promised that if he were to nominate a Supreme Court justice, he would nominate a black woman. Can't tell if you can see the inherent problem with that sort of statement, but in case you can't, let me lay it out for you. First things first, how about we just nominate the most qualified person? How about that? Maybe we should go with that standard for pretty much anything and everything we do, especially on a governmental level. Because here's what you do if you say that sort of thing. If you say, I'm going to nominate a black woman, all that does is destroy the credibility of any black woman who would have otherwise been qualified for the job. Now, because Joe Biden said, I'm going to nominate a black woman, now, if he nominates a black woman, pretty much everybody is going to be like, well, there were other qualified candidates who would have served better in that position, but he made this promise and is going to go the racial route. Look, there are black women that would be well deserving of that seat. But now Joe Biden has destroyed the credibility of any of them by saying he's specifically going to choose from this specific subset of the population. Like I said, there are super qualified black women across this country, and he just diminished and demeaned their entire credibility by saying he's only going to pick from black women. There's a problem with that. Also, on top of that, what he's done effectively is said, I'm going to discriminate against Asians, Hispanics, gays, all of the other minorities that exist in the country. They don't get a shot at all because you need to nominate a black woman for some reason. The inherent racism in that statement is pretty befuddling when it comes to that sort of thing. Look, I've talked about this a couple times on this sort of show. The idea of identity politics backfires quickly when you talk about doing X because of whatever, right? Nominating a black woman because it would be a historical, groundbreaking thing. And it would be. But if you're going to announce doing that, it eliminates the credibility once they're actually nominated. Let's just say if he does nominate a black woman, everybody is going to be looking at that and saying, well, she just got the nomination because she's a black woman, regardless of whether or not she's qualified for it. Because the thing is, there are black women that are qualified for this position. I believe that. Everybody watching this probably believes that. Yet the president says that effectively is saying that, well, black women need some sort of special treatment because they haven't been on the Supreme Court yet. Again, not to mention all of the other minorities that you're completely disregarding. It's just, it doesn't help minorities' credibility when it comes to these sort of things. Now, I will say that, I will say this. I understand that throughout history, positions were chosen based on these sort of ethnic standards, whether it was spoken out loud or not. I'm not denying that sort of thing. 100 years ago, the country looked a lot different than it does today. But fixing any of those quote-unquote mistakes in the past is not done by making the same mistakes in the future. I don't know. This thing kind of touches a nerve for me, and it's super irritating, especially in positions where minority people are well qualified for a position, but are looked at as the token minority because you need to fill some sort of diversity quota. News broke early Wednesday that Associate Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer, 83, plans to retire at the end of the current term. While the White House declined to comment until Breyer himself made the announcement, Psaki confirmed that President Biden stands by a vow he made in 2020 regarding a future potential nomination. Biden vowed that in 2020 to nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court should he have the opportunity to do so. I don't know. Let me know in the comment section what you think. To me, I don't think if you want to bolster black voices and minority voices, it doesn't help to put them in positions purely because they are a black or a minority person. Doesn't help the credibility. All you're doing is making other people question whether or not they're actually qualified for the job. And look, like I said, I have no problem with Joe Biden nominating a black woman. But the second that you say it, diminishes and devalues all of their credibility. Same thing with any other minority. If somebody says, hey, I want to hire a semi-quasi-funny Samoan, and then they hire me, I want you to hire me because I'm good at doing something, not because you have to check a box. The president, I guess, still doesn't quite understand how demeaning that sort of thing is. There was a joke yesterday floating around on Twitter. Are you familiar with Candace Owens? Super smart, also black woman, but doesn't agree with the president on a lot of things. She started trending on Twitter yesterday because everybody said, yeah, you know what? Let's, hey, maybe Joe Biden, maybe you reach across the aisle, unite people a little bit more, and nominate Candace Owens to the Supreme Court of the United States. I don't think you have to have a law degree to be nominated to the Supreme Court. But that's that. You know, it is what it is. We'll see who he ends up nominating, and hopefully whoever it is is the most qualified person, because that's the only thing we should care about. The only thing we should care about in these sorts of nominations is not the race, gender identity, political leanings. Are they the most qualified person for the job? That is the only thing that should matter, especially in these instances. Anything else is just diminishing and demeaning their credibility. If you haven't already, click the little like button, click the little share button thing. It really helps us out. I really do appreciate it a lot. I know a couple thousand of you watching right now. Just hit the little like button. Whether this story makes you angry, makes you laugh, maybe you love it, I don't know, who knows? Maybe you come from a different perspective, and that's totally fine. I appreciate you tuning in. But it really helps us out, get out to more people. Have you been following this? We haven't talked about this yet, but this is a huge story, I think. Canadian Freedom Trucking Convoy. There is a massive convoy of truckers traversing the Canadian terrain, highways, making their way to the capital to protest vaccine mandates, COVID shot mandates, which I think at this point, I don't need to go over this, are completely unnecessary in every way, shape, or form. The CDC had that story out, what was it, last week, 2 weeks ago, that natural immunity was 6 times better as a defense against the Delta variant. So there's that. But this story is unbelievable. Before I get super into it, though, I got to tell you about this. What are gas prices like where you are? I am curious. Mine have gone up about $1.10 where I live in Southern California, so that's what I'm dealing with. But inflation is at a 40-year high. Reagan saw it 40 years ago, massive inflation that we haven't seen since. In his own words, and I want to get this Reagan quote correct, inflation is as violent as a mugger, as frightening as an armed robber, and as deadly as a hitman. Right now, your retirement accounts are under attack by what the administration is doing, devaluing the dollar substantially and causing inflation, again, to reach a 40-year high. How are you going to protect your savings? Well, the best way you can do that is investing in gold. Do you have any gold? And I'm not talking about backing up a truck into your backyard, digging a hole and burying gold in the ground, but you can do that with our friends at Birch Gold. But also, if you have a 401k or an IRA, you can text our friends at Birch Gold 989898. That's the number. Text JOBOB to 989898 to get a free, no obligation information kit of everything you need to know to protect your savings. Inflation went up 7% last year, which means unless you have it in some sort of gold-backed something, you lost 7% of your money, which is not good, especially if you're nearing retirement. So for a free information kit, text JOBOB to 989898, Jobob to 989898. I know you have your phone just sitting there. Quick little text to get you all the information you need to know. Protect yourself against inflation. It's not going down anytime soon. To get back to this, this is this crazy story coming out of Canada that I think is super interesting. Look at this. This is regarding the last story we were talking about. Yes, Candace Owens. I think that would be awesome as a Supreme Court justice. My guess, and I'm stealing this, I think friend Isabel Brown over at TPUSA said she believes that Biden's going to nominate Stacey Abrams. She does have a law degree from Yale. That would kind of make sense. Probably the most hyper-political Supreme Court justice we've ever had would be Stacey Abrams if he were to nominate her. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm stealing that prediction from a friend. But anyways, this Canadian Freedom Trucking thing has been going on in Canada the last couple days. En route to Ottawa and expected to arrive Saturday, the convoy has been sparked by government measures to stop unvaccinated truckers from crossing the Canada-U.S. border and has grown into a conservative movement opposing COVID-19 restrictions put in place by Justin Trudeau's Liberal government. Conservative politicians and Canadian volunteers opposed the vaccine mandates, throwing their support behind groups of people and vehicles reported to be about 20 kilometers long. So a long truck driving convoy is headed to the capital. Check out what Justin Trudeau said about this, though. Justin Trudeau, again, the Prime Minister of Canada. What he said is honestly pretty frightening. We're going to discuss. Listen to this.
The small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing.
First of all, holy cow, this is just halfway through a statement. The Prime Minister of Canada, again, You can't say this sort of thing out loud, holding unacceptable views that they're expressing. A fringe minority of 50,000 truckers stretching over 20 kilometers. I don't know what that is in miles. This is America. We use miles. But regardless, a massive horde of truckers who, one, don't interact with people. I don't know if you know anything about trucking, but it's not done in a big group in the little cockpit there. You're completely and entirely alone for several hours, but truckers are not allowed to cross the US-Canada border. So those truckers are protesting the vaccine mandate. And Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, says they are holding incorrect views. Holy cow, dude. Look, even if you believe that, you can't say it out loud. You're starting to sound like an Austrian that I know from the... I don't know. You're starting to sound like a pretty upset German in the 1940s. I don't use that comparison lightly. You can't say that sort of thing, dude. But he goes on. Listen to this.
Do not represent the views of Canadians who have been there for each other, who know that following the science and stepping up to protect each other is the best way to continue to ensure our freedoms, our rights, our values as a country.
Next question.
And then he goes on, excuse me, we'll pause that really quick. Then he goes on to invoke my favorite phrase, if we're following the science. Dude, the science is pretty dang evidently clear that people don't need to be mandated to have the COVID shot. According to freaking everybody, the WHO is now on board. The CDC released that thing last week that was months behind the science. Yeah, they're following the science. They're following months behind the science. They released the thing last week that natural immunity 6 times better, and that's the CDC. Now, I know that's not a Canadian regulatory governing body, but it's the United States freaking government. So what quote-unquote science are we following? That's my favorite thing nowadays. People in voting, following the science. The science says you don't need it. It's not polio that killed 30% of people that it affected. It kills 90.00001%, especially if you're under a certain age. So when we're talking about quote unquote following the science, what science are we talking about? Again, this is all coming from the CDC's website, talking about the science. But then he talks about, so at the beginning, he talked about a quote-unquote fringe minority. I want to play a clip that, maybe statistically it might be a minority, but it's not such a small fringe group that they should completely be disregarded. Watch this clip. This is a bunch of video clips from the trucking convoy out in Canada.
Wow, this is a huge, look at they go forever. This is by Atchison outside of Edmonton heading to Calgary.
If you're just listening to this, I know you can't hear, just to narrate, this is a huge, it looks like LA traffic, honestly. That is how many trucks are on the road. A massive line of truckers swapping. There's another shot of a bunch of truckers just making their way to Ottawa to protest something that doesn't need to be in place. Again, some of the views here, the pictures, not the views, not the ideological views, the pictures here are pretty stunning of how many people are actually on board doing this. But yeah, it is absolutely insane what's going on in Canada regarding the vaccine mandates, but also with the truckers. So that's going on in Canada, and when I believe they're supposed to get to the capital on Saturday. I'm not sure. They're gaining more and more people everywhere they go, so I would imagine that's slowing them down just a little bit. So if they do, in fact, make it to the capital on Saturday, we'll have that on Monday. Maybe we'll see if there's anybody from Canada that wants to talk about this on the show there, seeing what's going on, especially in Canada. So that's that. So this is one of my favorite stories, I think, in a while. Partly because it is culturally indicative of what's going on, but at the same time, it's also pretty freaking hilarious. Have you heard of Neil Young? Do you know who Joe Rogan is? They are, I wouldn't say they're going head to head because they're not really. There's a mediator involved, but there is a hilarious happening going on between Joe Rogan, the most famous the biggest, highest grossing podcaster ever in the history of ever. More people listen to Joe Rogan's podcast than any other podcast. It's like, and it's like crazy. I want to say that like Joe Rogan beats CNN ratings by like 20 times almost, which is insane. But they have a feud going on, and I'm going to tell you all about that right after I tell you about inflation. Inflation is at a 40-year high. Ronald Reagan had to deal with inflation 40 years ago, and it hasn't been this high since. Inflation is through the roof. Let me know in the comment section. What are gas prices where you live? How much has milk increased in cost over the last year? How much is bacon? Geez, I went to the store the other day and almost had to take out a second mortgage on my home in order to buy a pack of bacon. I haven't because I can't afford it. But prices are through the roof. I know that you're seeing it everywhere. I want to get this Reagan quote right. In his own words, inflation is as violent as a mugger, as frightening as an armed robber, and as deadly as a hitman. Right now, your retirement account is being attacked by the devaluation of the dollar done by the U.S. government. And not to go on some crazy sort of tangent, the U.S. government benefits from inflation. If you have a massive amount of debt like the U.S. does, it's in dollar amounts. And if you increase the dollar amounts and devalue the amount of the dollar, guess what? The bill on your debt goes down substantially. Maybe we'll get into more of that a little bit later. But how do you protect yourself? Well, invest in gold. The best way that you can do that, the easiest way you can do that, thousands of customers, A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, is contact our friends at Birch Gold. They will send you a free, no obligation, no risk, no nothing info kit to tell you everything you need to know about rolling your IRA, your 401k that are already existing into a gold-backed IRA, or buying physical gold. Anything you need to know gold related, our friends at Birch Gold can help you with. So text JOBOB to 989898. That's Jobob to 989898 and get that free kit today. No obligation, no thing. All it is reading. It's catching you up, friend to a friend. You should learn what you need to do, especially with inflation at a 40-year high. That's JOBOB to 989898. Jobob to 989898. And our friend Birch Gold will help you out. Back to this clip. This is hilarious. So, okay. I'm curious if people have been following this. Let me know in the comment section if you've been following this story. If you don't know who Joe Rogan is, I explained it a couple minutes ago, but I see people come on and off this stream constantly. So really quick, Joe Rogan is the most profitable, probably famous, most listened to podcaster, not only in America, but on the planet. There are some reports, especially from Spotify, that some of his podcasts get 50 million downloads / streams. That number is coming from Spotify. Compared to CNN, that gets like 700,000 viewers in their primetime slots. Joe Rogan is huge, is what I'm trying to say. Massive, massive platform. He moved over to Spotify in 2020 in a deal that reportedly was over $100 million. Huge deal. Huge, massive deal. Then there's Neil Young, washed out musician from like the 70s. Nothing against Neil Young. Probably is a pretty decent guy. Maybe wrote some great songs. I wouldn't know. I was born in the 20th century and haven't listened to any. I don't know if that's accurate. I think he was also born in the 20th century. What I'm trying to say is Neil Young, while he's probably a good dude, probably a great musician, haven't heard from him in a long time. Well, he issued an ultimatum to Spotify. So Spotify hosts Joe Rogan's podcast and also hosts a bunch of music. The Heart of Gold and Harvest Moon singer, I've heard neither one of those songs, earlier this week penned an open letter to his manager and label asking them to remove all of his music from Spotify, saying that it spreads fake information about COVID-19 vaccines through Mr. Rogan's show. You can either have Rogan or Young, not both, he wrote. To which Spotify replied, yeah, we're gonna go with Rogan. I hope that's okay. Biggest podcaster on the face of the planet in the history of the universe? 70s washed up guitar player. Doesn't really seem like all that difficult of a choice. And also, here's the other thing. What makes Neil Young think that we care about the opinion of a very old guitar player? I don't actually know. It doesn't make any sense to me why he thinks, oh, look, and I don't know, maybe this is a publicity stunt. I'm a big PR guy in terms of like what's a publicity stunt and what's actually real. And a lot of times, controversies are stirred up intentionally to create some sort of publicity. I don't know if Neil Young has a new album coming out and wants his name in the news, or he actually thinks that there was a possibility that Spotify might pick him over Joe Rogan. Well, they didn't. So there's that. Yeah. Spotify, that's it. That's the whole story. Spotify did not pick Neil Young over Joe Rogan. They said, yeah, we're going to be removing Neil Young's albums and songs from Spotify. We hope to have him back soon if he decides that he would like to share a platform with, again, the most popular podcaster ever in the history of the world. So that's that. I want to get to this. This is probably the most, I don't even know what to call it, the most untoward story we've ever done. And I'm sorry for this, but it is kind of interesting. I'm trying to think of the verbiage I want to use. Chinese swab testing for COVID-19 is back. They are bringing back the undignified swabs, not in your nose, not in your mouth, not in your ears, in the other hole that you have in your body. We're just going to say it. We're going to come right out and say it, in your bunghole. That's where Chinese swabs are going to be. The Chinese government is bringing back swabs to test in that area for the COVID-19. Super demeaning to pretty much everybody. And interestingly enough, right in time for the Winter Olympics coming to Beijing. The communist regime claims that the virus test, which involves inserting a 5-centimeter long saline-soaked swab in the patient's bum and rotating it, this is from the New York Post, by the way, is more accurate than other on-the-spot virus tests. So that's coming back to China in time for the Winter Olympics, which we shouldn't be going to, and athletes themselves should probably not go to for their own safety. If you haven't already, click the little like button. I don't know, how does this make you feel? Is there a gross emoji in the little like things? Is there like one of the vomiting ones? Because this is disgusting. And I'm sorry for bringing this to you, but I thought it was, again, just interesting in light of the Olympics coming to China. Chinese newspaper, the Beijing News, said that at least 27 people underwent the bum swab test at an apartment building where a 26-year-old woman was caught with Omicron, the city's first recorded case, which is, again, a lie, clearly. The invasive bum test involved inserting a sterile cotton swab into the area and rotating it several times. The swab is removed and analyzed in a lab. So there's that. China is, it's... How disgusting is right? That's right, Brenda. You are absolutely correct. I don't know. I'm sorry for bringing you this. Again, I just thought it was interesting because it's probably the most demeaning way you can test somebody for the CCP bat fever, and just right in time for the Olympics. Remember, they had this like a year ago, and then they got rid of it, and now they're bringing it back right in time for a bunch of the athletes to show up and completely humiliate athletes from around the world, including those from the United States. So there's that, China. Appreciate it. Beijing Biden won't boycott the Olympics, a comment from Bill. Yeah, that's bad. Evelyn says, how completely humiliating. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. It's pretty crazy. Sick. See, there's the little emoji things, the little vomit emoji things. I don't know if it's in the little things that you can click at the bottom, but you can comment them. We've got more of that. People throwing up. Yeah, this is bad. All right. There's some of these comments I'm not going to read, but they are kind of funny. You know what? That's going to do it for us today. Appreciate you sticking around, hanging out. We had a fun time talking about that. But if you missed any part of the podcast, the show, whatever you want to call it, you can rewatch on Facebook, rewatch on YouTube, rewatch on Twitter, wherever you're watching this. First of all, appreciate you doing so. Yeah, you can grab the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We have not submitted an ultimatum to Spotify. I have not submitted an ultimatum to Spotify, just so they know. I am more than willing to share the most used platform with Joe Rogan. You're welcome, Joe. Appreciate you. That's going to do it for us today. Again, appreciate you taking the time to listen, hang out. Oh, whoops. Sorry about that. We'll be right back here tomorrow. If you haven't already, follow me on any of the social media platforms. I would really appreciate it. At Jobob. Just type in Jobob to Instagram, Facebook, Getter, Twitter, YouTube, all of those. We can be friends. Send me stories. Really appreciate all that sort of stuff. That's going to do it for us. Sorry, I've said that 3 times now. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on a Friday. Maybe we'll have some funny stuff for Friday. God bless America.